Good evening, Linda.
Hi, you know what? There was a problem with there were two links for this meeting.
Oh,
Yeah, so I was on the other link and I thought, well, where is everybody?
my question is, what are you doing here?
What am I doing here? Well, um,
We
the
have the other one.
new land use clerk, Tessa Dowling, is also she's the agent for Leverett Conservation Commission. And they usually meet the first Monday of the month. However, that was Labor Day. So prior to her being offered the job in Shutesbury, they had already changed their schedule to tonight.
I see. So you got drafted.
I did.
All right. Well, good to see you.
Likewise.
Hi, it's Deacon. I'm not showing up on the screen, so.
Your
Turn on your video, Deacon.
your
Say
audio, your audio's off. I mean, your video is off.
Oh, okay. Here, I think I'm okay.
There. There we are. Turn that right on. Oh, no,
Nope.
the other one. There we go.
Ah,
I wonder if he has the other link.
Yeah, that's what I'm wondering.
Robert, are you still outside?
No, I'm inside.
Okay. I was going to be impressed.
Well, I'm prepared to move outside.
Robert, I think you should put a flashlight under your chin for effect.
Well, I'm just kind of liking the dramatic sense of the black background right now.
So, why don't I start the meeting? I mean, since we have a forum.
Hang on for 1 second. There's another person joining the meeting. Deacon.
Oh, good.
Hello? Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yes.
Great, super.
That's Bob. That's Bob.
So I was thinking that the first item that we could start, if you're ready, Linda.
Yeah, I am. Thank you.
Okay, so let's open the meeting. I'll read the governor's announcement. Following the governor's restrictions on public meetings, this meeting is being held virtually using zoom.com for remote participation. Public may access it following the instructions on this meeting's agenda posted on the town calendar. If despite our best efforts, we are not able to provide real-time access, the public can request a recording of the meeting by contacting clerk. Okay, so the first item on the agenda is public comment. If there's anyone here who needs to leave early and speak now, or to bring up a topic that isn't on the agenda, this is the time to speak. Okay. Hearing none, I'm going to recuse myself, go shut up the chickens, and ask Steve Bressler to chair the meeting. I need to recuse.
Well, go tend to your chickens then.
Okay. And I'll be back.
Okay. So I guess the first item on the agenda is the Zapco property. And I guess we can open it up to discussion. Is there anyone on the board that needs to say something, or do we need to hear from the Zapcos first in their presentation that they sent along? Yes, Jeff?
You're muted, Jeff.
You're muted, which isn't bad for the rest of us, but you know.
There you go. Take that. So I guess since it's at the initiation of the Zabcos via their attorney, they should probably be afforded an opportunity to make a case as to why they're here and what they're seeking from our board.
Okay, so you want to walk us through your presentation, whomever?
Sure. Sure. Thanks for hearing us tonight. Can you all hear me well?
Yes.
Great. My name is Paul Bobrowski. I'm an attorney for the Zabcos from Bobrowski and Vickery in Amherst, Mass. And we wanted to come before you tonight to sort of get a read on where the Zabcos stand with respect to their property. I sent out a small packet this morning or this afternoon. I hope you've had time to look at it. It's got a property card. It's got a map of the location of the property. It's got a number of photographs of the Zabco camp and a few other items there as well. So just as an introduction, the Zabcos have a camp structure on their property, which is off of Montague Road. And they've received a cease and desist notification from the Franklin building inspector. Lack of frontage, etc., the typical thing that you would expect for a dwelling unit. However, what I want to present tonight is my belief that this is not a dwelling unit. It's simply what we're calling a camp. It's a very nice structure, as you can see from the photographs, both inside and outside, but it does not meet the requirements of a dwelling unit based on the state building code. So we're not talking about a house, number one. And number two, I've had several conversations with people up in Shutesbury about how the Zabcos may want to apply for an open space project under your zoning bylaw chapter 5. But when I read that section, it's clearly designed to refer to residential units. The whole section of the bylaw deals with subdividing the land, selling lots, calculating density units and things like that. The Zabcos don't want to do that. They have no intention of subdividing the property. They just want a camp structure on this property for recreational use. It has no fixtures. It has no plumbing. It has no sanitation. It's a single room with a stairway into a loft. But again, there's nothing else there. So our contention is that the open space section of the bylaw doesn't really apply to this use. My understanding is that you've had several versions of open space, and the first one was implemented back in the middle or the early part of 2019, and it was revised in 2020. The Zabco camp structure was built substantially in June of 2019, so it would fall under that first version. But again, I don't think it belongs. It needs to be treated in that section at all. There's a section in your bylaw about driveways being limited to 1,000 feet, but because this isn't a dwelling unit, I don't think that section applies. You have language in your bylaw that deals with preserving forest roads, and the Zabco access to the property is through an easement that's recorded and it's gated. It runs through the conservation land along the Coles property, and then it goes into the Zabco property. So where does it fit? I've looked at your bylaw, and here's what I think, here's how I think it should fit. You have a section on accessory uses, and this, I believe, is the applicable zoning bylaw section because this structure is not a dwelling unit. Just for background, a dwelling unit is defined in the building code as a single unit providing complete independent living facilities for one or more persons, including permanent provisions for living, sleeping, eating, cooking, and sanitation. If you look at section 3.2 of your bylaw, the language there says the following uses and structures and activities shall be prohibited unless state or federal law provides otherwise. And so the use on this property right now is basically for hunting. And that is a allowable use under state law. And I would argue that this camp building is an accessory structure to that primary use. Under section 3.3 of your bylaw, 3.3-1, it says, in addition to the principal uses permitted in a district, accessory uses and structures which are subordinate and customarily incidental to such permitted uses shall be allowed on the same terms as the principal use, i.e. by right with site plan review or by special permit. And so I would argue that the real course of action here in dealing with the building commissioner is to go under a site plan review by this board and hopefully sign off on that so that the building inspector can be satisfied. And I think the Zapcos are perfectly willing to have the building inspector permit things like they have temporary propane that gets used when someone is using the property, and they have a generator there as well that's used by propane. So they're perfectly willing to have those inspections and get those permitted and bring those up to code if they're not up to code already.
Okay, anything else?
Probably.
Did you want to share any of the pictures from your presentation?
So you don't have those with me? Or with you,
I do
Brett?
have them, but I don't know if other members of the board would like to see them.
We all got them PDF wise.
Thanks.
If,
Even-
just ask, would other board members like to see the images that Paul is talking about? Or have you seen them?
Yep.
Okay,
Is that a yes, you've seen them, or a yes, you want to see
Yes,
more?
I've seen them.
and
I've
I've seen them as well.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm seeing all shaking heads, so we're good.
I've seen them.
Okay,
I'll just, if you, with your indulgence, I'll just ask if the Zapcos have anything else to add at this point, if you're willing to listen to them for a few minutes.
Yep. So, name's Jade Zapko. Thanks for taking the time to meet with us today. Appreciate it. So when I was to the point where I was thinking about building my camp in the woods, I had talked to an attorney just for some advice. It just mentioned what I was doing. And he said, since it's not a dwelling, I wasn't having a well or a septic and I couldn't pull a permit, that basically I could build it out there. So that's why I kind of went out and doing it. I always check with laws and whatnot as best I can when I'm doing things. So that's basically where I went with that, and with a point where, I figured it was okay to build it. So we went about building it. The whole time when we were building the camp, I have a trail that cuts through our property that I allow people to walk on. It is posted, but I give permission to townspeople and whatnot to walk through it. And one of them's one of the select board members that's seen it from day one as we were building it up, and she stops and sees it and kept saying how great it was, how it looked awesome. Not once did I ever hear that I wasn't supposed to be out there building it. So the whole course of time building it, she kept stopping and seeing it. We talk all the time. So in the whole time, I still thought I was in the right building it. No one ever said anything. People walk through the properties, teachers, other town officials. So I didn't think anything about it and thought everything was good. So that's where I was building it. My friend who has recently passed away, John Puffer, has a property right next to it. And he had built his property out there. And from what I remember him telling me, he built it, never pulled permits. And then the town just went and taxed it. So that's figured what was going to happen to me was once I build it, you guys would tax me on an outbuilding on our property. No problem being taxed on anything. So I was not like I was trying to skirt anything. So I just figured he's got a building, multiple buildings on it. No one's ever said anything, but yet, so that's why I went and was building mine. The whole time when we were building it, friends with Puff, he always would tell me different things he wished he did with his camp. I.e. like the nice porch, making sure it's facing the sun. And this is kind of what I did with this camp, was built it the way he wanted to in his honor. So it's kind of, his first camp was his camp, and this one was the one that we started building together before he passed. And it's what he wanted, you know, the stairways put in the building the way it was, the front porch facing the sun, everything. So it's basically, you know, all in all, it's a big honor to my friend John Puffer. And it was never meant to be a dwelling, you know, a permanent residence anyways. I live a mile down the road. So it's just a place to go hunting and warm up when we're snowmobiling. And that's the same thing John Puffer used with his camp. You know, snowmobilers would stop in, warm up, and kind of what I wanted to continue doing now that he's gone was to keep that tradition out there alive and on Brushy Mountain. But right now it's stopped, I guess. So that's basically what I have to say. I was never trying to hide anything. You know, thought everything was copacetic the way I was doing it. So I don't know, that's where I am. And that's.
Yeah, I think
Go
I
ahead.
just want to add real quick that my name's Nicole Zapko. That this has been ongoing for, you know, a year plus. And I think that we were kind of surprised when Jim Hawkins called. So we first received a phone call from Jim Hawkins telling me, I answered the phone that day, telling me that, you know, he's throwing down a cease and desist, Jason's got to stop what he's doing, et cetera, et cetera. I tried to ask him some questions at that time, like, what can we do? What's the process? And he basically said that we would need to go to the town and work it out. I was curious as to how it came about because this has been ongoing for quite some time. And he said that he got a call from the Board of Assessors or someone on the Assessors Board. And that's how sort of he got involved with it. But like I said, we were sort of just surprised at the length of time. Again, had Jason had talked to an attorney and, you know, people were walking through the property on a regular basis. We had no idea that what he was doing, you know, there was anything wrong. We've been residents of Shutesbury for 19 years. The camp is a mile away from our home. Obviously, our dwelling on West Pelham Road is our home and our house, and no intentions to do anything out at camp except have it be a camp. So I guess, you know, we want to make things right and figure out a way to make it so that camp can still be a viable place for Jason and friends and family to use for hunting and for snowmobiling and things like that.
Okay, thank you. So I think we have to first determine within the board, is this a planning board issue before we go any further? And I'd like to ask Jeff to speak to that.
Okay. Paul, I'm trying to figure out here what permit you suggested you could apply for from the planning board. You said a site plan review for this camp as an accessory use. Is that correct?
Correct. If you look at section 3.0 through 3.3, it suggests how you would permit this accessory building to a primary use. 3.3-1 says, in addition to the principal uses permitted in the district, accessory uses and structures which are subordinate and customarily incidental to such permitted uses shall be allowed on the same terms as the principal use being hunting, which is by right. So by right with site plan review, or if not by right, by special permit. So I was suggesting if you wanted some oversight on this property under this section of the bylaw, that you could impose site plan review.
Can I interrupt for a sec, Paul?
Sure.
In looking at the use table that we have, under residential, community, business, energy, utilities, which are the four great categories for uses, I don't see anything that refers to hunting. So where are you saying that that's a primary use? I'm not talking, it might be mentioned in statute, but it's not in our use table. So what are
Sure.
you referring to?
Under state law, you have the right to hunt on your property. Certainly there are regulations involved there.
But it's not in a use table in terms of what you would get a permit for and what you can use property for in the town of Shutesbury, regardless of it's a legal activity. You could drive a car in Massachusetts, but it's not in the use table. So it's apples and oranges as far as I could tell.
Under
Yeah.
section 3.2, it says the following uses, structures, and activities shall be prohibited unless state and or federal law provides otherwise. And so under state law, hunting is allowed. So yeah, you don't have to have everything in your use table that is allowed by the state. But certainly that's an allowable use on this property.
Yeah.
Jeff,
That would, in my understanding of principal uses, something like hunting is not a permit, is not a principal use. Hunting could be the accessory use. Yeah, I do see commercial hunting in our use table. So commercial hunting could be a principal use. But that doesn't appear to be what this is. You know, there are many things you can do on your property by right. You can walk on your property. You can cut trees down on your property. You can build trails. You can hunt. You can do some agricultural activities, but they don't rise up to the level of principal uses. I mean, a dwelling is a principal use. A business is a principal use. A lodging facility, an office, a restaurant. So, you know, all these things that are listed here are principal uses available in Shutesbury, but just the background ability to hunt would not be a principal use, in my opinion.
I guess that's what my point was, you know, and just, I think that given that, you know, the definition of an accessory is it's subordinate to the principal use. So if you don't have a viable principal use, the accessory doesn't, it's in relation to something that's principal. So it falls apart if there's no valid principal use. I mean, the usual example would be someone has a primary residential building and then they have a small consulting business and they have a shack out back, and that's the secondary accessory use to the primary residence. That would be the normal example, I would think.
Yeah, you're right there. I mean, typically you have a principal structure and an accessory structure. But the way the bylaw is written, you can either have a principal use or a principal structure, and an accessory use or an accessory structure.
Well, I think it's a terminology thing, because if you look at the use table, which is uses, that we're referring to how you can use things. So there's residential uses, there's community uses, there's business uses, and then there's energy and utilities, which is not entitled to use, but that's the other category. So I guess I would say in the definitions on page 72 of our bylaws, that when they're talking about principal use or building, it can be a building or it can be the use that we've designated, not some generic use that as an activity that people in the Commonwealth can take place in. And I mean no disrespect to the Zapcos. And I don't want to be difficult, but I think the argument that you're putting forth doesn't make sense to me. I don't understand how it could go forward.
And so how do you square that with the adjacent property?
I don't know. I'm sure it was built a long time ago, and
'03.
Okay, well, I wasn't on the planning board in '03, so I can't speak to that. I'm speaking to what's in front of us now. And, you know, one could make an argument for precedent, but that doesn't it doesn't mean that it works for the bylaws.
Mhm.
The statute of limitations has run out on that other property. It's either 7 or 10 years. If you build something without a building permit, under state law, the town's got to catch it and do something about it in either 7 or 10 years. I can't remember which, but that time has passed for that other structure.
meaning,
So,
Jeff, meaning what?
meaning it can't be taken down. We can't force the other structure to be taken down because it survived unlawfully for either 7 or 10 years. So it can stay. But that was probably something that was built and survived out there for a period of time until
They
you couldn't do
found it.
anything about it.
Well, they saw it after he built it within a year, and they asked for permits, and there was no permits. So then the town just taxed them at an outbuilding with a year to 2 years in building it. So they knew about it. The town knew about it, and they decided to tax them as basically a dwelling because on the property record it shows us that bathroom and everything. So I don't want to take that down. I'm just stating on how you have a building that actually exceeds what I'm using my building for, that the town said, okay, you didn't pull a permit, we're just going to tax you on a building, but yet mine doesn't even meet anywhere near what his meets, but then I can't have mine on the property.
Well, before we go there,
Well, I'm just saying, sorry.
before we go there, I'll take under consideration what you had to say about principal use and hunting, et cetera. But let's go back to open space. And let me ask if you think that there's room under that section of the bylaw, an expedited way to get this approved that way, expedited in the sense that half the things that section of the bylaw discuss don't apply on this property. Is the board open to that?
I guess Jeff would have to speak to it if he was the one who put it forth. It seems, and again, it's not that I want to make anyone's life difficult, but finding a way of approving something where the fit might not work seems weird. So Jeff, are you the one who articulated that it might be possible?
Well, people can apply for things. If you get through the Article 5 open space design process, you end up with 80% preservation that has to go into a conservation restriction under Chapter 184, Section 31 to 33, which is a complicated process. And then 20% is available for the potential of residential units. And I suppose if you got through that successfully, and you had the right to build residential units or a unit, you could build less than a residential unit. If that's what you truly wanted under that provision. This is a special permit. We changed it at our most recent town meeting. There are extensive criteria that have to be met.
Jeff, can I ask you a question? Just a very basic one.
Sure.
There's no frontage.
It's a landlocked,
Yeah, I don't get.
Yeah.
I mean, if there's no frontage, you shouldn't be able to build anywhere in town.
One could propose under Article 5 something that didn't have frontage, but that had guaranteed deeded access. I think that's the way it's worded. That's possible. But it's a discretionary decision on the part of the planning board. There are many criteria in there that would have to be considered by the board, but theoretically, it would be possible to get an Article 5 approval with rights to build one or more single-family dwellings, and one could build less than that.
I can understand building less than a single family dwelling, which the hunting cabin would fall under. But I don't understand the spirit of Title V wasn't designed to, it was really designed with development in mind, and maintaining open space in lieu of development.
Yeah, I mean, that's the purpose of open space. The first sentence is, the primary purpose of the section is to preserve the open space resources of Shutesbury, and especially large contiguous blocks of forested backland. So if we were, what ended up happening is a structure got put in the middle of forested backland where there shouldn't have been a development. So it seems like to make an exception is actually 180 degrees opposite of the intent of the bylaw.
Well, I caution us against advanced deliberations on this project. We really should steer clear of that.
Well, I'm just, in just terms of, I think they're looking for guidance.
Right.
Well,
And if we're saying that it would be we would require a lot of exceptions for Title V, for us to grant a special permit under Title V, we don't want to waste the applicant's time.
Well, it wouldn't be us who assessed the need for Title V, it would be the Board of Health. They would be the ones that would require a Title V system. But
Article 5 we would consider.
Article 5, yes. All Article 5 does is in a case like this, is it takes that property, the 28 acres or whatever it is, and it's going to put 80% in conservation, and it's going to leave you 20% to be developed for dwellings. And if you successfully navigate that, and you have to demonstrate that you have deeded access from a public road to get in there for this purpose, and then you have to meet the subjective criteria in Article 5 that we have added, because this is a special permit, and we have to believe this is in the spirit of what that whole Article 5 is all about before we approve it. You have to get through all of that, but in theory, you could get through it, and you could end up with probably what you wanted if you got through it.
I think what Jeff's saying is that's the best advice we can give you under these circumstances. And it would be only if you tried for Article 5 that it would be a planning board issue. Otherwise, I'll ask Jeff, would it be a planning board issue if they weren't going a special permit via Article 5?
I think the only thing we would do is Article 5, the open space design. I mean, the other route, of course, is to appeal the building inspector's decision to the Zoning Board of Appeals, and make the case that this doesn't rise to any type of dwelling. It's simply a woodland camp, and make your arguments that it hovers below the definition of a dwelling unit, and something to that effect, and try to take that argument as an appeal from the building inspector's decision, take it to the Zoning Board of Appeals.
Yeah.
I
got a question.
Or you could try to think of it in terms of a zoning variance, which would also go in front of the Zoning Board of Appeals.
Now, since I'm not on the ZBA, I just have another question informationally. So in terms of sanitation, what is there in the building or next to the building or whatever?
And there's no sanitation other than if you were in the woods, how would you go to the bathroom? You
Okay.
pee on a tree.
Well, I'm thinking of more than peeing. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, well, we all know how to hold it, and I mean.
Well, I guess, and again, if it's not in our purview, because it looks like it might go to the ZBA, but it strikes me there's a refrigerator and a loft for sleeping. So then it does become a Board of Health issue.
The loss for storage.
For storage, okay.
Yep.
And the fridge is just for daily food, that kind of stuff?
No,
So
No, it's when we're warm up, they just keep water in there and whatnot, or. it's not, there's no food or no nothing. I mean, it's
Yeah.
not out there enough to have food in the fridge.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, and the use would not be daily, not even close to
No,
daily.
I know. But like if you're out there on a Saturday or something, you'd have food stashed there before.
Oh, well, no, I mean, it would
Yeah.
be if like, the guys were going out hunting that day, they would bring what they need for that day.
Right. Yeah, that's what I meant.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yes,
yeah,
yeah.
Yeah.
Not consistent daily
No,
use.
I got that part. Yeah, I was, and again, I'm asking for understanding just because I don't think it's in our purview. That's really the zoning board of appeals. But I was working off of the definition of, it was provided in terms of a dwelling, and the
Yeah.
sanitation question jumped out. So it is a nice building, by the way. So
Thank you.
Thank you.
And the refrigerator really comes under the category of a place to stash your beer.
That's AKA water.
When you're hunting.
After you're done.
After you're done hunting.
Are there any other questions that the Paul or the Zapcos have at this point?
Yeah, if we wanted to go the Chapter 5 route, I'm assuming we would apply for a special permit at that point?
That's correct.
Okay. I need to confirm.
Article 5, you're talking about, Paul, right?
Yeah, article, I know what you're talking about.
Yeah. Okay.
Correct, yeah.
I said Title 5 before.
I was wondering how we got there. But yeah, I need to
Article 5.
confer with my clients in order to decide what to do next.
Article 5 was recently amended at the June 27th town meeting. It was significantly amended. And those amendments particularly affect projects like this. So I would suggest that you obtain the most recent version, not maybe the version that's, I'm not sure what's available online, but it has been amended and it's now off to the Attorney General. So
Yeah, so I have the warrant article for that. I'm assuming it passed unedited.
I believe it did.
Okay.
Yeah. So that's what you're dealing with.
Okay,
Okay.
that's all I have.
Okay.
Anybody else have any other questions relating to this property and the project?
I just want to recognize this is not a good place to be. So, for getting misinformation on the friend, it's unfortunate. So I just want to extend my,
Yeah,
person to person, it stinks.
yeah,
Yeah.
It does.
yeah. Yeah, thank you. Like it's a tough one to sort of have to deal with after the fact,
Totally.
But we just at this point want to do what's right and make it right. Obviously Jason's, put a lot of heart and kind of soul into this cabin and, would be devastated if it has to come down. And so, yeah, yeah. Just want to, again, get on the right road here and do whatever we need to do to be able to keep it up, tax it, whatever has to happen.
Can I ask you a question?
Sure.
Where in the lot is it located? The actual structure?
If you have that little map there.
Yeah, I'm looking at it.
It's pretty much right where that arrow's pointing.
Oh, hold on. I was on oh, got it. Okay. Right in the middle.
Yeah, right where the trail goes, right where the easement goes right through to get to where John Puffer's is. It's right there.
In fact, the Puffer property uses the same easement.
Yeah.
And if you look at the property cards that I included in the material, interestingly enough, the property cards changed over the last couple of weeks. The earlier Puffer property card had a photograph of the cabin on it. And that was the most current property card for Puffer does not have it. And what's changed on the Zapco property is it's now being called a ranch, whereas before it was not.
Well, the only thing that strikes me, it's pretty radical concept. I don't know if you would even want to think about it, but from what I can tell, and I came to this meeting only seeing the maps and not having the background, so I'm just throwing this out there. But if the property that the dwelling was on was somehow, like sold to Deacon, Deacon's got a primary use on his lot. If you extended Deacon's lot to include the building, then it actually is an accessory use, I would think, right, Jeff? I mean, it means selling your property and becoming part of Deacon's,
No.
which you probably don't want to do it, but if you wanted
No.
to keep the building, I think that's, the proximity is there.
One last question on that, on the property cards, on the Puffer new property card, it shows a half bath, but on the Zapco's property card, there's no bath.
There is no bath on the Zapco property.
I understand that, but there was on the Puffer Camp property card.
My understanding, well, Jason, you know the property. You want to comment on that?
There's no bathroom in it, no.
There's no bath at Pups Camp.
Yeah, there is an outhouse, right?
There's an outhouse
Mhm.
and there's power from a generator, and then he's got propane for his fridge.
Okay, I'm just going by the property card where it says half bath one.
That's why I mentioned that earlier when on his it states a bathroom, and which is more of a dwelling where mine doesn't have, and it
Right,
doesn't make it a dwelling. That was kind of where my argument was going. So.
okay. Well, I think the board certainly understands and sympathizes with your predicament. As you know, we have to kind of have good reasons to make this kind of, certain decisions, and that's where you guys and Paul comes in and see where it goes.
Mhm.
Otherwise, I think unless anybody else has anything to contribute or a question, oh, Jeff's waving his hand. Okay. Wait, Jeff, first push mute and then talk, please.
Okay.
Okay.
That
I
was
didn't think
really
you do it, actually.
So, Paul or the Zapcos, are you aware of what the easement grants? I mean, obviously it grants access over some strip of land, but does it specify access for what?
I have reviewed that, but off the top of my head, I can't answer that. I have that document. If you want to give me 30 seconds, I can pull it up on my other computer and take a look at it, if you want that answer now.
Jeff, do you feel like we need that answer now?
No, I just think you should be mindful if there are any limitations in the easement. Often the easement will say an easement for X, Y, and Z. And X, Y, and Z might be logging, hunting,
Mhm.
I don't know.
So I reviewed that easement when I first was brought into this matter, and I don't remember any of those details being there. It looked like general access running with the property.
Okay, yeah, I would just be sure that,
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay. Have we exhausted this enough? And are we ready to move on? Because if we are, we'll thank the Zapcos and Paul and move on, get Deacon back in the picture.
Okay, thank you very much for your time.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you very
Good night.
much.
Take
good
care.
night, Paul, good night, Zapcos,
Good night.
Take care. Have a good one.
good night, Moon.
Okay, now how do we get Deacon back?
I'm here.
Paul,
Oh, look, he's back.
He's been lurking.
Okay, Deacon, back to you.
Okay, I think we have a little more time before the select board and the candidates show up. Why don't we talk about the minutes of 8/3?
9-3.
8-3.
8-3. Sorry, got carried away there.
You're ahead of us.
Yeah,
Linda, this is what happens when you kind of leave the venue for a while. You
it's true. It's true. Got carried away. Yeah, 8-3.
Well, why don't I move to approve the minutes of August 3rd, 2020?
Do I hear a second?
Second,
Who did?
Was that Raymond? I mean, Robert?
yes.
Okay, thanks.
Um,
Okay. In discussion?
Yeah, I think it'd just be helpful since, Linda, thank you very much for making the edits. Just to explain the thinking behind the amended version that Linda sent out today.
Yeah, I hope everyone had a chance to see that version.
Yes.
I mean, Linda always does a great job. But what I noticed in reading it is that I didn't feel it was specific and consistent between each of the, the subdivisions. And so I wanted to make sure, especially if this was the basis for someone coming back and, appealing, that since this was a primary source, that we had in each one of the subdivision decisions, the explicit statement that they were rejected and disapproved in every one, and that they all said that it was as written. So it was clear that those things were all the same. So that's all that happened there.
Okay, just let me go through these things quickly, because a bunch of it is what I was supposed to have said. Michael, did you take anything out of here?
No, there were some that were really clear in those statements. And what I suggested to Linda was just that she replicate what was there in each one of them. So they all said the same thing. So it all said rejected because, and then disapproved because, and then that we voted on them as written.
Okay, I know 3 out of 4 of them are also rejected because they are not subdivisions. We don't deem
Right.
to be
Yeah.
and so that remains unchanged. That's
Correct.
here?
Yeah, and the one that I am quoted on, which is the 4th one, is different in that regard.
Correct, the Baker one. Yeah. Okay. All right. Yeah, I don't mind this. I just would. I guess I would prefer if we do stuff like this, we do it at a meeting where we're all sort of looking at it together. Deacon sometimes does edits that are ministerial in nature, just grammar and punctuation and things that were pounded into his head in the school that he went to when he was.
That's a little demeaning, Jeff.
Huh?
Yeah.
That's a little demeaning.
Yeah. No, Jeff, I totally agree. I mean, the discussion of edits should be in an open meeting.
Yeah.
And I mean, what we've tended to do is, because I read them in advance, I send them to Linda, and then she's made them so it's easier to read. But there's no way that we should not discuss them. It seemed like these are extensive enough that I think Linda took the initiative just to make it more readable. But I wholeheartedly agree with you.
Yeah, I don't mind if they're called out like this and then brought to the meeting, so you can clearly see what someone has suggested.
Yeah.
So let's so when I read the minutes, Linda had clearly distinguished the edits that Michael had proposed. And there were italic versions and red ink versions, and let's just be clear on what we're approving. I mean, because she had both in there in the last version.
Well, let's see. The one I'm looking at now has. Oh, wait a minute.
So if you agree with the edits, then you would approve the minutes with the red changes. Without the italic, without the italics.
So the italics is what you had originally written.
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So like if we look at number 2, just as an example, you can see, what it was written was more vague than what the red is. And so the idea was to just be really specific about what we did and why.
This is the one sent out at 4:06.
Correct.
And you're looking at page 1 right now?
I was using number 2, page 2,
Okay,
item 2 as an example.
okay.
If you compare the red to the italics.
I mean, I'm fine with these changes.
Oh, so let's just figure out, I mean, are we clear to vote now?
I'm good to vote.
Do we? Okay, and so we're approving the red.
Correct.
Okay. I'll call the roll starting from the upper right. Michael,
Aye.
Jeff,
Aye.
Robert,
Aye.
Steve,
Aye.
Linda,
Aye.
and I'm an aye. Okay. Well, we still have a few minutes. I suggest we move to address Michael's concern about email responses.
Oh, was that actually on the agenda?
Yes,
Cool, thank you. I didn't see that. You want me to just mention it before so we can talk about it?
please.
Yeah, so I had emailed Deacon just because in the last month we got some emails inquiring, like there was one about tiny houses. And well, I guess the two things I wanted us to discuss, I know both on select board and school committee, when I was on them, we had conversations about what the protocol was. So if anyone's ever written to the select board, for example, Melissa will send back an email that says, thank you for your interest. We cannot talk about this, but we invite you to an open meeting. And so the decision there was that if there's something that goes to the select board generally, that the chair would respond and basically encourage the person to engage, but let them know that they, because most people have no idea about open meeting law, that they couldn't engage in open conversation. But the reason I wrote to Deacon was not that I was worried about someone having improper conversation, was more that someone might not respond. And then the person, that was the other thing, is that sometimes people feel like, oh, we can't respond, so no one ever gets a response, which is not good. And then if we feel the responsibility to respond, that, that like I would say, Deacon could respond. And then if it's an issue about open space, maybe he can tag Jeff to follow through. But I was, I was reading that thinking, this is a good question, but I don't want to say anything because it's really not my place. And I don't want to, I can't speak for the board and we don't have a protocol. So it was mostly having a conversation about if someone writes to planning@shutesbury.org, how do we respond so that they get a response, and within the context of what we're legally allowed to do for business, that we communicate.
Well, I did fail on that one. I did, and I should get in touch with them with exactly the response that you had. It is a complicated question.
My understanding, the response basically is we can't respond to this.
Well, yeah. Although I would say that there are certain times when people email with questions that are entirely straightforward, like if somebody asks how many feet of frontage do you need for an A&R lot, I don't feel bad about answering that.
Right.
And sometimes the questions are just that simple.
Yeah, I think it's, we're not allowed to deliberate, but I would agree with Deacon, if it's a factual response and there's no deliberation, and then it just comes down to, and Deacon, I wasn't bringing it up. I didn't know that you failed, so I didn't want to put you on the spot.
I'm happy to fess up. And the part of the reason I failed was that there's not an entirely straightforward factual answer. to that question.
Right.
So
Sometimes I'll see something that comes through addressed to the planning board, and then it'll sit there and I'll not know what's happening. I mean, there was and I think last month I did something to a regional planning agency out in the eastern part of the state. They just had a general question about some aspect of our zoning. So I answered them. I knew they weren't an applicant. They were just a regional planning agency collecting data, probably calling lots of towns that they thought might have interesting bylaws. So I answered and then copied in the rest of the board so you could see what the answer was. But you know, we have this on the ZBA all the time, and you know, the building inspector will often send people to the ZBA and they'll call Chuck, and then if Chuck doesn't have a ready answer, he calls me, and then the people get an answer. They don't get an approval or a disapproval or an opinion or anything else. They just get, you know, like what Sergeant Friday would give them, just the facts, and then they can make of them what they will. And I think that's appropriate to do in between meetings. And I mean, I actually had a conversation with Paul Bobrowski, who represented Zabco a couple weeks ago. He called me because I know him, and he just wanted to know what's in the bylaw and, you know, what the different sections mean. So I told him. But then a particular conversation like we had tonight can only take place at a meeting. So I think we have to differentiate between just giving the facts and telling them what sections might apply, and you know, what the dimensions are if they want to know, and what permits and from what board and other things like that we can tell them. But if they really want to get down and talk about their project, they have to come and see us all.
I guess I'd parse it into two different things, sort of the who and then the content. And maybe what I could propose, and it sounds like, Deacon, you usually catch, you know, you're the one responding as chair. And it might be that if someone feels like it would be more appropriate for them to respond, that maybe we would just email you on the side and say, do you mind if I respond, or something like that. But the assumption is that you would be responding. Is that a correct assumption?
I think there is that. I think that's a correct assumption, but I would add that, you know, I'm chair of the planning board, but I'm not the brains of the planning board by any means. And we actually have the benefit of a real planner, which, I mean, I'm not going to, I mean, responding to a regional planning agency about the ins and outs of our open space design is not something I'm near as qualified to do as Jeff is.
Yeah. Oh, I agree. I was just trying to, as a starting point, and I don't have a planning background either. You know, but if someone asked about open meeting law, like, maybe I would know more about that. But I'll, just for my benefit, I'm going to assume that you would respond as the chair, and maybe if it's a very straightforward thing, Jeff could, you know, would respond. It was just not clear, you know, and so I didn't want to bring my assumptions to the table without checking. And then I think in terms of the content, I think Jeff sort of spoke, the two of you spoke to it, which is if it's content, not deliberation. You know, I would say the best thing is always just to point them to the webpage and say, here's the bylaws, because then it eliminates the interpretation factor. But I'm okay with it. I was just sitting there thinking, this is a really good question, and I didn't see any answers, and I was trying to figure out, you know, I didn't want to take up.
And I didn't answer the question, partly because you know, there's a lot of ins and outs to that issue.
Yeah.
Well,
Oh, yeah.
So I think what Michael, what you're asking is, if you can't answer the question, meaning it needs to be in an open meeting, then what you're suggesting is just have a form email that says, I'm sorry, I can't respond to your question, but you can come to our next meeting and we can discuss it then. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, I mean, that's the practice for the select board and school committee. I think it's really easy. And then if it's a complex issue or even a mildly something that we have to discuss, it's people know that they can do that.
Yeah, otherwise, they might think you're rude, Deacon, and not just answering.
Yeah.
Right, and I will take the blame for that.
Yeah.
I will. That was poor.
No, it's not this particular instant. You know, that really, that's irrelevant on this particular instant. It's really just good practice, I think, to have a form email. And if you can't answer the question, you ship it out. And if you can't answer the question because it's facts, you do that.
Yeah.
Fair enough.
Good summary, Steve. That's perfect.
All right,
Thank you.
let's move on then.
It's 8:00. Perfect.
All right.
Okay, so we should move on to our new member quest.
Most popular board in Shutesbury.
My machine says it's still 7:59, so
You just keep talking, Deacon. Those seconds are passing.
yeah, I hope so. I don't see Mary David's name on my screen. She did email me to the effect that she was still interested. She is out of town attending to the birth of a grandchild. So there, 8:00. So why don't I'm sorry. So I was going to ask people to speak a little bit and be available for questions in alphabetical order by last name. Mary David would have been first, but she's not here. She had hoped to be. And I think the next one in alphabetical order is Henry Geddes. So. So does Henry wish to speak about joining the planning board?
Sure. Henry Geddes here. I'm not sure what to say except that I have a long-standing interest in matters of policy. You know, at many levels, international relations, but also local government. And I think it's a given that change is inevitable. The question here is, how does that change occur? On what terms, what conditions? There's going to be a lot of changes in the future of this town. I figure the whole country is going to be undergoing major changes. It's a good time to get involved. It's something that I feel an affiliation for, shall we say. Reading laws, interpreting law, and applying policy based on evidence. In short, that's my interest is that. I expect to retire shortly, and I might as well be involved in local situation, which is the place where I can make most of a difference at this time. I'd be open to any questions you might have.
I was about to suggest that.
Yeah.
Jeff.
Henry, do you have experience or history serving on other volunteer boards or commissions, municipal, county, state, nonprofit, what have you?
Yeah. Well, I'm on the historical commission right now. Have been for the last 3 years. in the past, I've been involved with non-governmental organizations, volunteered my time. And I guess the one aspect of my experience would be more in the academic realm. I'm an academic, so the typical, the classic committee work, which is what most people don't realize. Academics spend a lot of time doing a lot of committee work, and so I have quite a bit of experience with that, with hiring, firing, and salaries, and the whole bit, evaluations. It's administrative work. I've also volunteered on and off. Currently, I'm teaching Tai Chi through a grant through the library, and feel that's very important work. I did teach Tai Chi before through the Council on Aging.
Okay, thank you.
Michael.
Yeah, I think I've got a couple of questions. I'm going to smush two together, and just I'm going to ask everybody this question. So hopefully, but from what Henry, from what you understand about the planning board, I guess there's two parts. How would you explain the role and scope of the planning board, and given that, what issues, if any, do you think are important for Shutesbury to be thinking about in the next 10 years?
You're asking me, right?
Yeah, I'm going to ask everybody. I'm asking you this time. Yeah.
Oh, I see. You're asking all the candidates.
Yeah, each, just so I get the same question out.
Oh, well,
and the first part is just for everybody. It's sort of definition, because I think, one can say, well, I want to be on the planning board, but the sense is, what does the planning board do? So it's sort of that baseline, like, what do you think the planning board does? And then given what the planning board does, are there things that you think might be coming down the pike that we as a town might be having as important issues?
Right. Well, I think that, what I've begun to see after having some experience sitting in on the board, it's not something I had imagined for myself, believe me, even a year ago, but having sat in on the board, I began to see that the planning board actually has a very important function. It's the aside from the grand vision of the town, which of course is open to a town, the town's will, shall we say. The planning board is implementing policies that would regulate, for example, urban sprawl, if it ever came to that. Policies regarding use of land, the zoning, and I have an interest in this in the sense that the urban sprawl is probably the major contributor to loss of habitat for many flora and fauna, so that's one of the issues. I guess the role of the planning board, from what I can tell so far, is that of processing the vision of the town, and in relation to the laws, Massachusetts general laws regarding zoning, regarding various kinds of land use, beyond what's in those laws. Perhaps there are even local laws that we have in the town. So it's very important, and I believe in the whole policy process. You want to be ahead of the game. You want to anticipate rather than be reactive to what happens. As we have changes, I don't know what kinds of changes are coming in the future. I don't have a crystal ball, but I imagine more people will move to this area. I don't think this is the last pandemic we're going to see. And lots of people have moved to this part of the country already. So it's possible the town may grow or be in a position to grow. I think that many folks who work in Boston already live in this area and commute. So I'd say that's one of the big issues. Also, I guess the question of having a vision that is, how should we say, equitable in terms of use of resources, use and the kinds of projects that go up, let's say development projects. In other words, that the various zones in the town share in this process in some way or another. That is, it's not limited to, one or two neighborhoods that suddenly, have to deal with certain kinds of developments, whether it be housing, whether it be solar farms or whatever. I think that's part of the, I would see that as part of the mission of a planning board, which is to ensure that there is that sense of reasoned and equitable approach to development, right? So that the citizens of the town can say, yeah, these people are doing a good job. They're doing it in a way that is perceived to be at least equitable across the town.
Thank you.
Oh, I'm sorry, Robert.
Hello, Henry. Just to clarify, this is for a one-year position, correct?
Yes.
Henry, I know you've been active, had been active in addressing the possible solar farm that's being in the works with regard to Baker Road, and you are closely connected to it on Baker Road. You would have to recuse yourself if you were on the planning board. Is that going to pose any problems for you?
No.
And just a second quick question, Henry. Do you, are you able to say whether it might be likely that you would decide to run for planning board after your one-year term expires?
It's possible. I'd like to see what it's like. I've never been on it, but it would be interesting. Yeah.
Robert, it's more likely that he would decide not to run. Just saying.
Thank you, Henry. Thank you, Stephen.
Does anybody want to ask questions further of Henry? If not, we'll move on to Alan Hansen, who's next in alphabetical order.
Okay. Can I just say whatever Henry said and be done with it?
If you could remember it.
Yeah, right. I don't have to remember. I agree with Henry in a lot of ways. I think two of the main pressures we're going to see in a town are climate change and population change. The population dynamics are going to be a big issue, I think, because I think what the virus has shown us is that the cities are going to become more and more less attractive. And places like Franklin County in central Massachusetts is going to become more and more attractive. So the question I see, one of the questions I see is how we're going to deal with what could turn into an influx of people into town, and how we're going to. So the other side of that coin is climate change and what it's going to do to our forests and our fields and our crops and so forth. And I think these two are going to play against each other in ways that we can't even imagine right now. So I see those as two of the big issues in town. Personally, I've been, as most of you probably know, I've been involved in town for quite a while. I've been on a number of committees, and I feel very strongly about helping guide this town towards the future. I think we have a lot to worry about. I can go on, or you can ask questions.
I wanted to make a comment. I would note that the major revision of the zoning in '08 was motivated by concern for population growth. And as soon as we got it written, it stopped.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, and yes, and indeed, it may well come, the population growth may well come back, and we may well need to revisit it, but that was the motivation of the '08 amendment.
That was before we had broadband.
We were very timely. We got it all done just before the mortgage crisis hit.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Well,
I agree. I understand that, Deacon, but I think things are going to change in the near future in ways that we don't expect right now.
I agree with that. I agree with that. And I certainly agree that we'll need to consider it again in that light.
I was on the master plan committee with Jeff when we did the master plan for the town, and I'm in retrospect, I'm sorry that we didn't have enough foresight to address some of the issues that I think now should have been addressed back then. Well, we always have the opportunity to go forward and change the way we look at things. I think we ought to. We're going to have to.
Well, there is that my little commercial is that, as I mentioned to the planning board, we just finished the climate mitigation process because we got the MVP grant, and I think actually some of these issues get revisited because the recommendations are having the master plan look at it in relation to climate change. So I think there is something, Alan. You know, just for fairness, since I said I would ask the same question, I think, Alan, you answered at least part of this, but you know, from what you're understanding about the planning board, how would you explain what the planning board does? And I think you just spoke to the issues part, so you sort of covered that part of the question, but I want to be fair and ask everyone the same question.
Well, I think if I can partially quote Henry's comment, I mean, I think primarily what the planning board is doing is applying known principles to the town. I mean, when we need to do something, how do we do it? And what laws are applicable, how the laws are applied, and what we should be doing to make sure that we're addressing the issues that we should address.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
Okay. More questions? Okay.
I have one. I was wondering, Alan, if you could just expand a little bit on, you know, what were some of the specifics in the master plan that you felt that weren't addressed?
Well, in hindsight, I mean, this is all from hindsight.
Absolutely.
Right?
That's life.
We didn't, I don't think we addressed very well the issues of what's going to happen to the population of Shutesbury. I think at the time we were looking at it, it was going down. The school population was going down, and we weren't really too concerned about a massive population growth in town. But I think now, I wouldn't be. And I want to say now. I mean, in the near future, the next 5 or 10 years, I think we're going to see a reversal of that. I think people are going to be leaving the cities, and when they do, where are they going to go? They're going to come to places like Shutesbury and places like Franklin County. And then we're going to have to deal with, I think, with growth in the schools, increased housing demands, where the housing going to come, how we're going to maintain our outdoor feeling here when we have more and more houses in town. Are we going to allow more houses in town? Can we get away with that? So those are some of the questions, I think, that we didn't.
Anybody after April to ask a question of Alan? Nathan Murphy.
Greetings. Thank you for having me here tonight. I think probably everyone may have seen my email. So I kind of will just gloss over the things I mentioned in that. But earlier in life, I served 6 years in the Marine Corps Reserve. I was deployed a couple of times. Concurrently, I also pursued my education. I actually did some schooling at Northeastern University, and then eventually found my way to UMass Amherst, which is where I got my degree. And that did kind of cause me to fall in love with this area of the state. I left for a while, moved out to California, made my way back because I do love New England, and this is where I'm from, where my family's all here. And, long story short, my family and I, we just bought a house in Shutesbury in July. And my wife found out that there was this vacancy on the planning board, and she said, well, Nathan, you better think about signing up for this. It's probably a good thing to do. And, funny enough, I grew up in Barre, Massachusetts, and my father served on the planning board there. Somebody wrote his name in, and they did a little write-in campaign, and he ended up being elected to the planning board. So I'm hoping to just get in there by appointment before my wife starts a write-in campaign. I don't have a lot of experience, anything pertaining to planning. My professional experience hopefully will, come in handy in possibly some ancillary forms, whether it be, posting, assisting with, posting some minutes to the website, or, maybe streamlining some of our processes or whatnot. Bringing the way that the planning board operates into the future a little bit, that might be something I can assist with if I were to become involved with it. And I will add that, I'm not dead set on becoming a member of the planning board. I do find it to be incredibly fascinating. My primary motivation is to become involved in the town and to build community with the people in this town that care about the town. I have kind of a very glossy image of Shutesbury. I know that'll probably be, scuffed up pretty quickly if I start getting involved with stuff like this. But we just got here, and we're meeting people on Baker Road, and we saw Jeff the other day get to show our son his horses, and we saw someone else that has some chickens in the backyard, right? And we're saying, our boy's going to grow up here. We got a wonderful school, and wonderful open space, right? Now, I know the school committee, maybe my wife get involved with that, and that's another piece. But as far as the open space and the kind of character of the town, I see the planning board is kind of a good avenue to kind of serve the public good and maintaining that. So that's kind of where my interest and motivation comes from. And I think with that, I will open it up to questions.
Thank you. He saved me calling for questions.
Steve, did you raise your hand? Is that?
No, that was just my hand passing by.
Oh, okay. Okay. So, well, Nathan, I guess I'll ask my question, but before I do, I want to first welcome to Shutesbury officially from this group of folks.
Thank you.
And I'm sure everyone would appreciate me saying this, but if for some reason you're not chosen, there's lots that you can do to get involved. If you look at the color of everybody's hair, for those of us who have hair, it's not a dark color. So, and there's plenty to do, and I commend you, because being part of the community, there's a lot of work. And Becky could maybe use some computer support. Is one thing,
well, yeah,
regardless. But because you're interested in planning board, I'm going to ask you these two questions. And
Okay.
It's the same one as before, but from what you understand of the, of what planning boards do, how would you explain sort of the scope of, what's a planning board about? And, it is sort of unfair since you're brand new, but on the other hand, coming in, what would might you see or sense as, some of the issues that the town might be facing?
Yeah, with, what the planning board is about, my understanding of it would pretty much come from the town website, right? Your, master planning, zoning, subdivisions. The planning board is going to review any applications that pertain to those areas. The planning board is going to work with the master plan from time to time. The planning board is going to implement the master plan by way of amendments to the zoning laws or various other methods, and also in their deliberations over business that comes before the planning board. As far as issues for the town, you are correct, and I'm new, and my understanding of the local politics of Shutesbury is very limited. I would think that one major issue that we may have as a town is to be overtaken with the same kind of divisiveness that is clearly manifest in national politics at this time, and which is on display if you consume any kind of mainstream media. And I understand that that's pretty tough to avoid, but that is something that I would want to kind of try and maintain a system in town of civility, to try and stem that. I think another issue would be kind of just maintaining what the ideals are of the town. There's a lot of, from what I gather so far, one of the big values of the town is open space and natural resources and conservation and things like that. And is time pass, there's a lot of people I feel that have kind of put together a pretty good system in the town, but as time passes, people move on from public service, and new people come in, and kind of maintaining the public awareness and support necessary to kind of keep the vision going, and to ensure that it's not eroded out of apathy or population growth, if whatever might come in the future.
Thank you.
Robert.
Nathan, I think the other person who I saw in the backyard with your wife and little baby looking at the chickens.
Oh yes.
Yeah.
That was your yard I was in. Look at the. Okay.
Yeah. And I do appreciate being a young man in the town for just a few months, that your energy and seeking this appointment. I guess I just wanted to check in with you. I know it's difficult to address. Is it likely that you might consider running for the planning board when your appointment expires in the year?
I would have to say that I would need to have a little bit of experience on there before making that decision. Sure. I would lean towards yes, because I think that you're going to be more effective if you kind of build up a knowledge base in an area of the town, and come to a good understanding of how that works. However, if I were to be appointed to the board over the course of a year and find, look, I actually am not really a good fit on the board here, then, I would be happy to support another candidate who might be a better fit, if that were the case. So, I mean, yes, I am interested in getting involved in the planning board long term, but I will qualify that with needing to find over the course of the appointment that it's something I feel I'm a good fit for. And I would like to add, because you brought up me being new, that I do hope that regardless of where I kind of land in terms of public service in the town, I do hope that having kind of some fresh perspectives and energy will assist me in my endeavors in that service.
Any more? Let's, Linda.
Yeah, I just want to remind folks that the vacant term ends June 30th, 2021. So it's not quite a full year before the election.
It's plenty of time, Linda, for them to get their feet, whoever.
Oh, yes, but I just wanted to be clear, that it's not from September to September, that it's, yeah, the election will be next spring.
Yeah. We're primarily lifers here.
Yeah.
Unfortunately. So Veronica.
Hi. First, I'd like to say I should have married somebody whose last name began with a letter before R, but so I wasn't last. But
I wanted to be fair to everyone, and
I know I'm teasing you, Deegan.
Thank you.
So I'm Veronica Richter. I have lived in town a very long time. Scott's family owned the front piece here for about 75 years, has. And then we bought the back 104 not long after we built the house because a developer actually was looking at it. And we were walking our back line and met him, got in our car and drove down and put a deposit on the land so that we could save that piece of contingent forestry that was there. So obviously we've worked hard at keeping it viable forestry land. When I have been involved in town government quite a bit. I took the job of town clerk on in my late 20s, and had it for two to 3 years until I had my second child, and I was working full time too. And back then, the town clerk was 2 hours on Tuesday night in the office, and the rest was out of your living room. So there'd be funeral directors in my driveway at 7 in the morning. It was a very different job back then than it is now. And then I was on the Space Needs Committee. When it was time to redo the building, the school building, and Stuart was the first grade when they went back in, and Andrew was in kindergarten. So I've served in that capacity, and I've been on the Cultural Arts Council, and I recently did the climate workshop. And I'm missing. How can I forget Open Space Committee? That huge document that we worked on. So I have a pretty good understanding of all of the land that's in 61, all of the land that's in Conservancy, all of that, because we actually hand did a map originally before we put it on the computer to make sure we had all the lots. So I have a pretty good picture of that. But as I said, we do own a good chunk of land. And Jeff will know that I had a lot of questions in 2008 about the new zoning bylaws because it did reduce the amount of frontage we had, you know, what we could do with it and whatever. Not that we were going to actually build on it, but, you know, just it did change how things were. So I did have a lot of questions back then. And I taught school for 36 years and retired 3 years ago. And now I have a little more time to get back into things here in town. And my I do take care of my grandchildren over near you, Jeff. And so I guess that's that. Now, as far as Michael's question goes, since I know it's coming, the planning board does make recommendations to the town for policies that pertain to the zoning in town and land use. And what's the second part? Oh, where the town should be moving, right?
Yeah, well, not where, but what do you see as the
Well,
issue you're grappling with? Yeah.
Okay. So yes, being on that climate change committee aspect, looking back through that report, it was interesting to see some of the things that people are interested in seeing happen. And I think that that in itself is important, that you see what the town as a whole wants and gets feedback for changes in the town. So yes, you know, who knows what will happen. When we built the school, we had 240 kids in it. And now I don't know the exact number, but it's low 100s, right? 135, 140 maybe. So it has been a huge difference from that time to now. So things do keep changing, and you have to look at it as it changes and react to what it looks like that change is going to be. So.
Thank you. I didn't even have to ask the question. I appreciate
There
that.
you go. Hey, you know, that's what I get for being an R, right? Oh, questions?
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, I did raise my hand this time.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Okay.
Yeah.
Steve.
Is there one particular issue for you that really concerns you, relating to the planning board and the future of the town?
One particular issue.
At the top of your list that you're really concerned about?
Well, I think that it was interesting, but that really wouldn't be planning board. But I think that the bylaws that went in 2008, I think that overall, like people said, things stopped growing. So I think they probably just need to be watched, not necessarily changed, you know, in the near future. I know there's no moratorium anymore or anything. So I guess we could, you know, I guess the biggest thing would be to watch growth, you know, to watch and anticipate it. So.
I just have to comment how atypical it is in the 11 years I think I've been on the planning board to have 4 or 5 people actually want to be on the planning board. The typical process is who wants to be on the planning board, and those people, everyone steps back, and the one who's left facing forward is the one who gets to be on the planning board. So we're kind of in shock, okay? I'll speak for myself. Deacon, I'm in shock.
Well, me too.
Well, time changes for everyone, right? Like I said, I've retired now, you know. Not that I'm not still busy, because anybody who knows me knows I stay busy, you know, between the church and bands and whatever, but not this summer. No bands this summer, but
And I will say, I think Deacon mentioned it last time, just for everybody who's interested, that the state law allows to have It's associate members. Is that what the terminology is? I forget.
That's,
But
that's what Donna said.
yeah, and so as a town, we would have to change the bylaws to allow for that. But it is something that I think it came up at the last meeting, so it's something we could revisit this year if we wanted to, in terms of actually bolstering the ranks of people who have, interest and energy. Since we don't have technical slots for 5 people.
We always have 1 or 2 on the ZBA, and it comes in handy because many of our decisions have to be made by 3 people. So we need to drop an alternate in frequently.
Yeah, I guess one other question I was going to ask that I'll just throw out to everybody, and you can answer it, or if it makes sense. But if you have thoughts, participation in the board, like just in terms of, it sounds like people have time. Some people have more, some people have less. But as we have something coming before the board, like if there's a special permit, part of the challenge, and I think Deacon stresses, who can make it to the meetings consistently if it spans months, was it last year we dealt with the marijuana bylaw, and this year we're dealing with a couple of bylaws, and so there's actual a lot of showing up and working. What I heard is that everyone's got some time and interest in doing that, but I just wanted to put it out and sort of you can just nod, like you've got the time and energy to sort of put into this, it sounds like. So
Well, let me clarify. You think you have the time.
I'm particularly appreciative of this as attendance officer. I mean, rounding up quorums is not always pleasant.
May I just say one thing? I forgot to mention that I'm actually now the chair of the Historical Commission, recently elected, or designated for that, whatever it's worth. Yeah, I don't know if I'll be able to maintain both, but we'll see. If not, yeah. And I think the reason for getting elected or designated is because I guess I imparted a certain sense of confidence in my ability to do certain work, and I think that holds true across my history, which is in committee work, you really need people to do research. I'm not a planner. I have some idea about planning. I learned a lot more from Jeff, but I know what it means to do research. I know what it means to find out to the very last stone unturned what is going on with a particular thing. And I think that's what makes a committee member worth their salt, being able to do that kind of commitment, and that's something that I relish. Let's put it that way.
We've been joined by a new candidate.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
So does anybody else want to ask a question of Veronica? Because my thought is that now that we've talked a little bit with everybody, I think I was hoping that we could have a little discussion by planning board members about what our concerns are with a new member.
Can I ask you a process question? Because we're on the select board's agenda tomorrow too. So are we talking today and voting tomorrow? What's the process?
That was left open. I did not know what people tonight would want to do. It seemed possible to me that people would want to vote tonight. It also seemed possible to me that people would want to sleep on it, and that's why we're posted for both days.
Okay, because the select board you guys can't vote because you're not even posted, right?
The select board is posted.
For
we
today?
didn't, yeah, we are posted.
Oh, cool.
We didn't call ourselves to order.
And Melissa isn't here.
Yeah, I
and
noticed that.
Chair is not present, so it seems it would be, yeah, if you would be willing to wait till tomorrow, it might be helpful for the select board.
That's what I imagine, is that we would, be able to just get to meet everybody and then talk about it at the meeting tomorrow, because both boards are voting.
Yes, it's a very odd circumstance. Jeff,
Yeah, I don't believe that, I don't believe the select board has met Mary David yet. I
that's
think
right.
it was just the planning board last time, and and she wasn't subjected to the same questions that we necessarily asked tonight. And I'm wondering if there's an opportunity to slip her in tomorrow so that the select board could meet her and she could have an opportunity to address the same questions that were asked this evening, if she's available.
Yes. Well, I'll send her an email and invite her to that.
I think that would be fair.
Indeed.
Question, I'm not sure if I can make it tomorrow night. Can the planning board decide as a planning board tonight who they want to choose, or there's the fact that Ms. David's not coming till tomorrow, make that an uncomfortable option?
Well, my understanding, Robert, is that we're not actually voting as boards, we're voting as individuals on the board. So, it's a matter of 8 votes as opposed to 2 bodies.
And it's a majority vote?
Yeah.
Yeah, and both, it's a majority vote of the participating planning board and select board members in a joint meeting. So I wasn't convinced that the planning board ought to make its own choice without the select board, because that's the state law indicates that we're supposed to decide this together.
I hear you.
Yeah, pool the members, and then the majority of the one with the most votes wins, I guess.
Right.
Yeah. There are nine eligible voters.
Ideally, there's 9 people, because then you can't have maybe
you can have a 3-3-3 tie.
Yeah.
In which
I just have a question. Did Mary David participate in your meeting, your last meeting?
Yes.
Yeah.
So you all are, the planning board is familiar with her, because I don't know her, so.
Yes, and I think we got off to a kind of ragged start. I think we were primarily because we're not used to this process of working jointly. So I mean, I think in retrospect that we should have had the select board at the other meeting. And I think we might be done by now.
Right. But
yeah,
here we are.
Yeah.
It does seem fair to see if she could join tomorrow so we could meet her.
Yes. I mean, she has confirmed that she's still interested. I mean.
Okay.
But
and I have to say, in some ways, we're so lucky to, 5 people who are, just it's wonderful to hear what people bring potentially to the planning board. And
really surprising.
We're lucky. We're a lucky town.
So what I'm hearing is that people want to postpone the discussion until tomorrow night's meeting. Am I right to think that?
What time is the meeting tomorrow?
6:30.
No.
That's what we're on for on the agenda.
Right, you're on for 6:30. It starts at 5:30.
Yeah.
Sorry.
That's right.
But the planning board's on for 6:30.
Yeah, that was what I thought.
So I would support that, Deacon, only because it's such a awkward / weird conversation to have. Being able to think on it a little bit is probably helpful.
Sure. Well, that's why it's posted twice.
And,
So,
So, so
Jeff,
I don't know if a motion is in order, or we just all just nod our heads, or what, as to doing it that way.
well, let's, why don't we just, I think we could have a consensus decision if nobody chooses to object. I mean, does anybody want to say tomorrow, doing this tomorrow night and having a discussion and possibly including Mary David is the way to go? Anybody object to that?
I guess I would just say, I think Jeff's idea is good. If, she can't join us, I do think that, I think it was Rita, you were just asking, the majority of us have heard from her. So it's, it's just a select board that's operating blind, unfortunately.
Yeah.
But I think rather than postpone it into October, which seems like we're losing ground at that point. So.
Yeah, I mean, Deacon?
Yes.
If you could reach out to her, let her know about tomorrow's meeting, and if she can't make it, if she could prepare some type of written statement that would be responsive to the types of things that were asked tonight that could be read, that could be something to go on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you've got the questions I wrote, Deacon, so you can just, riff off of that if that's helpful.
Clarification, is it anticipated that the candidates will be present tomorrow night?
It's an open meeting.
Up to them.
That's the awkward part.
And as far as Mary David, in as much as she's made a presentation once, and the other candidates have made a presentation once, I'm assuming that she would just submit a written statement to supplement what she's already done.
If she wants to, I mean, she may. I will suggest to her that she could be at the meeting and or submit a written statement. I mean, that's. I mean, the select board does. It would be better if the select board heard from her.
Is the recording of the meeting available from the last planning board meeting?
Oh, brilliant, Rita. It should be. Right, Linda?
At least to have some familiarity with who she is.
Yes, there would be a recording. You would have to contact Grace to obtain the link.
Okay, so maybe April, we could do that, and then make sure that Melissa gets it too.
So this was
That's a good idea.
This was the and the minutes will be finalized tomorrow, and Grace will post them, so there'll be the minutes also.
But what meeting was it? What was the date of the meeting where the candidates?
8/3.
Okay.
Should this situation arise again, I will definitely invite the select board for the first meeting.
So I think just without prolonging tonight too much, my sense is, since everyone except Melissa's here, that, what we want to do tomorrow is basically sort of figure out, since we have strong candidates who are thoughtful and knowledgeable in a variety of things, that it's really a matter of trying to discern, who we would want to appoint to this position. And that's really the challenge for our discussion.
And I think additionally, I think that the members of the planning board and the select board should have some discussion with each other about what we're looking for and what's important to us.
That's great.
Because we all have our own views, and we may be able to. My hope is that we can educate each other about what's important. because not everybody is starting in the same place.
Well, Deacon, what I really like about what you said, and thank you for framing it that way, is I do feel it's sort of it is an awkward discussion because we're talking about people who are stepping up and want to volunteer in an open setting. We're talking about them. And so
Yeah.
framing it as what we're looking for as select board and planning board and what we think is important doesn't end up being a critique of the individuals who are interested. It really is sort of like putting forth what we think the town is looking for, which I appreciate. So thank you.
So we're on for tomorrow.
I will likely be late, so don't discuss anything important before I get there, okay?
All right. Well, I'd like to thank the select board for coming. Or the 2/3 that did come. That's great.
And the candidates who showed up.
Yes.
Thank you.
It's really
Yeah.
good. This was and very civil.
Actually, this is just a ploy because, you know, if you're on a committee, you're just meeting all the time. So this is sort of back-to-back meetings. It's just a test.
That's right.
Yeah, well, I gotta say, we never had to choose among five candidates. We sometimes have elections with no one running.
Right.
Unless we remind you guys to run.
But I think it is, it's a sign of how things are changing and people really want to be involved in the decisions about how we do change or deal with the changes.
Right. We're all cooped up at home.
And we're all cooped up at home. And Zoom meetings you can do anytime.
Yeah, the best thing about Zoom meeting is the driving.
Yes.
So are we set for tonight, Mr. Chairman?
Well,
I'll
hope
move to adjourn.
Yeah.
Yes, I'm
Second.
happy to entertain a motion.
Done.
Second,
I seconded.
discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All right.
And I think the select,
Roll call vote, please.
Take care. Aye.
Oh, okay.
AC, aye.
Okay. Michael,
Aye.
Stephen,
Aye.
Jeff,
Aye.
Linda,
Aye.
Robert,
Aye.
and I'm an aye. Okay, done.
and I think the select board is done.
By acclamation. Okay.
See y'all tomorrow.
Good night, folks. Have a good time.
Thank you all.
Bye, thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
And not to worry, anybody who doesn't make the planning board, we have lots of places for you to work.
Becky,
Yeah.
you know, there were 2 links for this meeting.
Well, was one
Somehow.
the select board link?
No, I don't, one was set up the one that I would normally log into as the host. And I went that route and no one was there. And I thought, well, this is wrong. So I went to the calendar and, logged in through that link. And that's where everybody else was because that's the link that Deacon had sent around, but I used the usual route that I would use as a host, and there were 2 different links.
Huh. I just used the one that Grace provided.
Right, but somehow there was a second link.
Yeah,
Yeah. It all worked out fine because it was only me that was in the wrong place, but.
Well, that's what I can't figure out, how you would see 2 and everybody else only saw 1.
Because I have, a Zoom link where I can see the meetings where I'm identified
Right.
as the host.
But
And-
Grace I did the Tuesday night meeting and she did the Monday night meeting.
Right. And I don't know how that happened. But I checked the numbers, I compared, and they
Yep.
were 2 different ones. I mean, it all came out fine, but it was just a perplexing situation. So,
And I'm still perplexed.
yeah, I don't know.
I-
either. But it was fine. I just wanted to say that was I don't know if it was a Zoom thing or
Well,
What?
it's good you figured it out.
Yeah, well, I thought, this isn't right. I know Deacon would be here early, so.
Yeah, I've had a couple weird things happening where like I've gone to my Zoom account and
Mhm.
nothing's there.
Oh,
Nothing. And
Well-
then I go to what I posted and
Mhm.
it's there.
yeah, yeah. So
Which is,
listen,
there's
yeah,
been some, and I've been getting some mail from them when they've had down, they've been down and stuff at different times. So I wouldn't put too much stock in it. I think it's,
no, I'm not. I just wanted to say that was this weird thing that happened. And so it was all fine, but weird. So,
yeah.
Anyway,
Weird is, keeps coming at us.
Yeah. Yeah.
Deacon, do you want me to try to reach out to Mary David too? Do you have a phone number or just email?
I have both. If you want to call her, she's right in the book. I don't have that number in my head, but it's a
Okay.
367 number. I think it's listed in the book as M. David.
Okay. So maybe if you email and I'll try to
Will.
back it up with a phone call.
That's great. That's great. Because I know she's interested.
Yeah.
She got
Yeah,
back to me.
And she was, it was, a decision could have been made a month ago. So to knock her out that wouldn't be good.
No, and she's got a really good excuse.
I didn't hear it.
Oh, her son's wife is about to give birth.
Oh
and
my goodness.
she wants to be around that. So I find no fault whatsoever with her not being here tonight.
Yeah, I agree.
And I don't know, and she may not be able tomorrow night too. I don't know.
Right. They might still be on pins and needles.
Yeah, not about the planning board.
Yeah.
Babe. Yeah. Okay, I found her number in the book.
Yeah.
This only lists people who have lived in town 20 years.
Yeah, and I don't know what'll happen because I believe she's going to be out of town.
So the number probably won't work.
Probably not, but I'm definitely going to email her.
Okay, and I'll leave a message.
Yeah, she may be picking that up, but I don't know.
Okay, great. Thank you, Deacon.
Well, thank you. I'm going to go eat something.
I'm going to do the same thing.
Good idea. Okay. Good night.
Bye.
Bye. And Linda, I'll double check the meeting for tomorrow, which is early, okay?
Okay.
Yeah, we better get on at 5 or something. See what chaos reigns next.
Yeah. Well, fingers crossed it'll all be fine. So,
Yep.
okay. Good night, Becky.
Good night.
Bye.